sun, I'll be the bride and black that's making you run. I feel alright and we'll feel alright, 'cause we'll work it out. Yeah, we'll work it out. I'll be doing this if you ever doubt, till the love runs out, till the love runs out. I'll be your ghost, your game, your stadium. I'll be your 50,000 clapping like one. I feel alright and I feel alright, 'cause I work it out. Yeah, I worked it out. I'll be doing this if you ever doubt, till the love runs out, till the love runs out. I've got my mind made up and I can't let go. I'm killing every second till it saves my soul. I'll be running till the love runs out, till the love runs out. And we'll start a fire and we'll shut it down, till the love runs out, till the love runs out.
Well, hello, I'm Jerry McKee, and it's Monday, and it's 7 o'clock. If you didn't hear all the clocks go off, you just missed it. So I'm glad you're here today, tonight, this evening, at this one day before all the voting. I hope you voted early. If not, vote tomorrow. You're going to have plenty of time. You might stand in line, but you know what? That's good too. Build your circulation. Got a special great guest, and everybody knows him around this area. We say Randall Ivey in his professional way, but we all know him as Randy Ivey. And Randy Ivey is also known, of course, as Randy, and he was born and raised in Union County. He earned a bachelor's degree in English from the University of South Carolina, and also Randy continued his education at USC, where he received his master's degree in creative writing and British literature. I bet he can talk British stuff. We'll see if he can. Randy Ivey is a novelist who writes short stories. He also is an essayist. He also works in his work has appeared in magazines, journals all over the country, including South Carolina Review, the Habersham Review, and Chronicles, a magazine of American culture. He teaches English, is a director of English at the University of South Carolina. And I will take my pretty face off and give you a much better looking face. And you see the number down below him right there? That's the number that you can call in also if you have a question to ask him. We're going to talk about his great book. He's got written many books, but this one right here, The Gift of Gab. We got to find out what the gift of gab and how he come up with that. Maybe he can't reveal some of the secrets, though. We never know. Randy, how you doing this morning?
I'm just fine, Jerry. Appreciate you having me on.
Wow, I'm glad to have you on.
You didn't mention that you were one of my students over the years.
That's right.
In the golden 90s, you were sitting in my classroom.
And I'm still got that golden hair.
You hadn't aged a bit. There's got to be a portrait somewhere in your house that's crumbling or something.
Oh, I tell you what, and you know what I really tickled about when the university took me and several other older people our pictures and put them on a billboard.
Yes, I remember that.
I can see people driving down the road and young kids says, "Is that the old folks' home, or is that you know?" I didn't know the university had geriatrics there.
Oakmont got extended education.
Exactly. So, but Randy, we're going to talk to you a little bit about you growing. Now, you grew up here in Union, and what got you motivated in reading books, and really got you on because I mean you're a professor of English, and I see a lot of your writings on there about some corrections that people should do, and my wife gets on me all the time about apostrophes. And tell me a little bit about you growing up.
Well, neither of my parents was formally educated. My mother did go to business college, went to Cecil's. She was from Packlet Mills, and she did go to business school, but neither of them had a formal education as far as university degrees. My dad actually had to quit school when he was 14 to go work, but he was so driven and loved education and learning so much, he went back as a 30-something-year-old man to night school and got his high school diploma. So I think a lot of that came from them, especially Dad's particular love of learning. We were fortunate, my sister and I, that we were regularly gifted books for Christmas and birthdays and things, and we were read to, which is very important too. It's not just a matter of putting a book in a child's hand and sending them off to the corner. Children have to be read to as well, and to get that sense of language. And we were fortunate that way. And I'd always been interested in stories. Avid movie fan. I think another thing I got from my father. And it's just sort of love of music too, love of lyrics, and all of it just seemed to have evolved into an eventual interest in poetry first. I remember in the mid-late 70s, I was very interested in the work of William Blake, the metaphysical poet, because he had some influence on some of the writers of lyrics of pop and rock songs that I admired. Joni Mitchell was another singer lyricist whom I greatly admired, who had a great poetic quality to her work. And so eventually I started exploring some of these writers. Dylan Thomas was another one, and James Dickey, whom I eventually got to study under. Most famous as a novelist, of course, Deliverance, but
Right.
primarily a poet. So I just sort of, Walt Whitman was another one, and I just eventually, like I said, a matter of evolution. Somebody said, I don't know if it was Faulkner who said that all novelists begin as failed poets, and that might have been my journey too. I did not plan originally to be in education. I planned to make films. Film was my main passion then, and I was going to go off to study film. Maybe as far as New York University, where they have
Didn't you have a class on films?
I do one every spring. Yeah, I do a film studies class. I started doing it back in 19, and it's carried on since then. It's the most popular class I have.
Yeah, well, I took a film in as upstate around a summer class, and we got to study Clint Eastwood
Right.
and all his movies, and I was all excited. Like, these young kids were in here, and they said, "Who's Clint Eastwood? Who's Dirty Harry?" And I was sitting here, what? Needless to say, I learned a lot from that. Even though I've seen these movies 100 times, he really pointed out a lot of different things. Like Clint Eastwood always had American flags in his movies.
Right. Yes.
And sometimes you can count up to 16, and it's just reflections. Somewhere or another, he's got that in there.
He's got another one coming out soon too. I think at the age of 94, he's still at it. It's called Juror 2, I think is the name of it.
Yes,
I'm not sure. It might be slated for next month or sometime next year.
He's still going strong.
At 94 years old. But I wanted to make films, and then I don't know what happened, and suddenly I thought, well, I can tell stories just by writing them. I don't have to go off to California, New York, or wherever. I can sit down in Union and write stories, and so I eventually settled on the idea of being a writer. And most writers that I knew of, if they were writing seriously, also taught. And so that led me to say, well, I think education, teaching might be the way to go here.
Well, you know yourself, when you read a lot and read books like that, you can go around the world without leaving your living room. Talking about poetry, my cousin there, he around my age, and he wrote a book, a couple of years younger than I am, wrote a book of poems. And some of the beautiful poems, he put some illustrations, some of the pictures that he's taken. And but I got a whole book of poems he wrote in Tony Malk, and he was real.
Where is he, Jerry?
He's in California, and he worked for NASA. He worked for all this stuff here. I had him on my show just a few weeks ago, actually, to talk about that. Plus his getting some things started in the Native American in New Mexico. Businesses start there to help the people there in the poor regions, and
Now you're from Saluda originally?
No, I'm from Roanoke, Virginia. That's where I was born.
Oh, you're a Virginian. Okay.
Yeah, and then
that's where my mother's people came from, Blackwater. But so Tony's originally from Virginia also, or
yes. We all kind of grew up around there, and when I was little. Now then, I moved to Hickory, North Carolina. That's where I spent most of my life growing up there. Now, was your mother a teacher?
No, she was a legal secretary to Bruce White.
Oh,
And
okay.
Bruce White was a leading attorney in town, and was also a state senator for many years. And she worked for him up until she retired around 76, 77. But no, she never taught or anything. There are no teachers in my family previously. I'm the first one to get a 4-year degree, but mother worked as a legal secretary for Bruce White, and dad was always in textiles. Started out at Monarch and retired many years later from Cedar Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you was growing up as a kid, what was your favorite book as a child growing up? Can you remember?
Well, I liked the Grimm's fairy tales a lot. I like not only just the words, but the illustrations appealed a lot to my imagination. I loved all those little. When I was in first grade at Foster Park, Miss Sue Keith, the older Sue Keith, not the one we have our friend now, but she was the one who kind of introduced the Dick and Jane readers, and I was envious of my classmates who got to read those. And I begged her. I sat down, please let me, and I talked her into letting me do that. So it was kind of anything at the time. But I especially loved the fairy tales. That great appeal to the imagination there, so very important to me.
Yeah, because most of your books, most of your movies come out of it.
That's right,
somehow or
yeah.
another like that. So you got to have some good writers and good imagination.
Well, I think another lucky thing is to grow up in a home where people went to church and to be acquainted with the Bible very early on, the rhythms of the Bible, the language, the imagery of the Bible. That's always been important to me too. So.
So you say when you read a book, I know some people will read it just to read through it real quickly,
Skim it,
and they kind of lose that letting the book when you write. And now some writers write a book and you don't get that imagery, but in your creative writing, what are some things you can tell us about how your creative writing versus the reading part and letting your imagination to go?
You mean the writing part versus the reading part, or
Right? Yes. Like when you're writing, are you putting the words as where I can vivid? When you talk about a chocolate pie, for instance, and you talk about how delicious it tastes just like, and you really a description, I guess, reading.
Yeah, I mean, one of the I talk about with my students every semester is what readers expect from a piece of writing, and one of the things they expect is specific detail. In other words, you can't just write that she ate a piece of chocolate pie. You got to be a little bit more descriptive of that. You got to actually put that piece of pie in that reader's mouth too. Give that reader some sense of it. But Jerry, I think as far as creative writing goes, I don't think anything. I was talking to somebody else about this a long time ago. I said nothing comes from me; it goes through me. And I'm kind of a receptacle for these things. I mean, I sometimes I wonder where they come from too, and I just feel like they're things that are I'm sort of the vessel or the vehicle, whatever, and these things are using me. These messages, these stories, these things are using me to get out. So
Now
I don't go into a trance or anything when I write, but. I don't want to be that pretentious or mystical.
So that way, if you walk in your classroom, you're like in a trance. I'm writing a
Been
book.
writing again.
Yeah, writing again. Does anything inspire you?
Yeah, language inspires me, and I feel privileged to be able to use the English language. To me, the greatest, the most majestic language there is, and sound, a voice. Somebody can say something, and that itself might inspire a piece. I remember when I was teaching at the Union program in Lawrence, and this is the old Wheat Street building. I was teaching I think it was an 8-week class, literature class, and a couple of little old ladies signed up for it. And their names were Rita and Louise. Well, I came to think of them as Thelma and Louise because they were a couple of fireballs. Well, it was a once-a-week class, 5:45 to 8, something like that. So we'd have a little break. And there was a break room in the building we were at. And we'd all go sit and relax, have a snack or whatever the case was. And one of the other students was this young man studying to be a minister, a young African-American man. And just one day, it was Rita. She started recounting this weekend she had had with her boyfriend, with whom she was not married. Right? And she had been married. The husband, father, had died from complications of diabetes, and she'd taken up with this gentleman. And they wound up a weekend together in Charleston. Not in separate rooms. I think separate beds, not separate rooms. But she said, and she just turned around and looked at him. She said, "Preacher, is what I've done a sin?" And that stuck with me. That one question stuck with me. And several years later, it became a story called Blood Sugar and Carpe Diem, which is about this little old lady who goes back there. She's lost her husband. Her family's very demanding. They kind of want her there all the time to wait on them, but she's still got the love of life in her, and she meets this old gentleman, Porter Stuckey is the character's name, at a senior citizen thing, and falls for him. And it creates conflict with the daughter, particularly. That's all from that one question she asked. It has kind of the real story had kind of a tragic ending, though. Rita and Louise took another class with me, signed up with another class, and right before the semester began, that boyfriend was killed.
Oh, wow.
Somebody killed him, shot him, and left his body in the woods right near the Lawrence Union line.
Oh,
and, of course, Rita didn't come back. And Louise came back, but she felt lost without her cohort, her buddy, and so she dropped out, too. Now, one other thing, and this hadn't happened yet, Jerry, but I'm still waiting on it, is you remember the Marjorie's restaurant down in Monarch?
Yes, sure do.
It was always a good restaurant, but when it first opened, it was a great restaurant. It was Mexican, Italian,
right?
Greek, anything. Great sandwiches. Well, anyway, I was there, I think, one night with my family sitting there, and there was a group behind us, and this woman, the elderly woman, she had a magnificent beehive, but she...
must have been in the 60s or 70s.
She was. We weren't. She was still back there. But I taught her daughters, actually had twin daughters, I taught them. And out of nowhere, she says, "Don't call that name out to me no more." And I have no idea what she was talking about, what the context was, or anything else. I said, but someday that's got to be the line in a story. It hadn't come to me yet. I'm still waiting on it, and it may never come. But those are the kinds of things I look for. I tell the students, you got to put these gadgets down. You got to look around you.
Right.
You've got to be open to everything around you. We've got to be. Henry James says we must be as one on whom nothing is lost. Yeah. That is, we've got to observe, see, hear, everything else. Dora Welty, a writer, very important to me, a Mississippi writer, lived all of her life in Jackson, the same house she was born in. And she said, all I had to do to get an idea for a story was walk out on the front porch and look around. There it was. Right.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, we miss a lot because we got so much distraction. And I write so many murder mysteries that we've had performed whodunit murder mysteries. Right. We did at the Inn on the Meriden, and also wrote some of these little scary stories, just different little things. And I says, and I'm laying beside you, and you're thinking these things. But I get the same thing if I'm quiet driving down the road like that. It comes out, you know what? I want this right here to work, and this right here to work, and try to make it happen to where it will. And you're right. You got to have that silence moment. You got to have that quiet. Even though you're working something or doing something, don't be distracted. All these electronics.
You got to come out of it. I mean, we stop talking to each other. We're not going to have a literature anymore. I mean, that's where literature comes from. It all started out as an oral tradition. Beowulf and Homer and those things, and we stop talking to each other, we're not going to have any literature in the future. Yeah, AI will take care of it for us.
Oh gosh, I know.
Another topic, another show, huh?
I've used it before, so I'm not too fond of it anyway. But I think video and short reels and things like that, people want that instant to hear it instead of letting their mind do the imagination. What is one of the things that you tell your students that when they writing a story for you, having to write an essay, you're having to write a short story, whatever like that? What is one of the things that you tell them that what you're looking for in that story?
Well, depending on the assignment, of course, they've got an assignment. They have to meet the requirements of that assignment. But what I find really special about a piece of writing is if there is a voice there. I mean, if there's something distinct there. Mm-hmm. It's not like a computer could have written it or anybody else. Now they're young and they're not, they're just starting as writers, but the ones that stand out are the ones that have a good grasp of detail and have a distinct voice and don't sound like anybody else's. But, I also warn myself, it takes years to develop one's voice. But those are the particular things. And nobody wants to be bored and things of that nature. So, anything that can catch somebody, a phrase, a term, a character, doing a narrative. I mean, anything like that's we look after,
Right.
And the details you were talking about a while ago too.
Right, and spelling and grammar.
People think that I must, and I do have a kind of a sheltered existence, but to be so concerned about those things. But language, Jerry, to me, is one of the barriers we have as a civilization. I mean, if we let language go and just do anything we want to do, we might as well just be beast in the streets or something. I mean, one of the things that differentiates us from the beast is language and the use of language. And I don't let split infinitives go. A lot of people do, right? I think Alan Charles is another one who's pretty strict about it too. But to me, those are ways not only of communication, but keeping a certain civility between people. I mean, it's like manners. I mean, grammar is almost like a form of manners,
Right.
To me. So I'm a big stickler on it, and I don't apologize for that. And
Well,
not that I'm perfect. And sometimes I go back and read things I've published, and I cringe because it's like that comma didn't get in there where it should have been. But
I'll let you borrow some of my commas. I got
thank
plenty.
you. Are you a commaholic, Jerry?
I am. I must
I've
confess.
broken them into commaholics, commaphobes, right? Either they're too scared to use them, or they're drunken, they're like turning a
Yeah, I'm a
pepper
dick.
shaker
It's
up
like
on-
an addict. Anyway, she'll critique something and she says, "Take that out. Take that out." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Take it out." But do you think we get lazy in our language?
very easy, probably very lazy. Yes,
I think so too. I think some of the slang that we use and it seems like we're getting more and more slang, and some of that slang I don't believe should be in dictionary either.
I don't either.
So
Or conversate. It's like something icy running up and down my back or something. And these kind of terms that these kind of faux terms that have made it into our language and have been included in the dictionaries now. And I think we've got to be a little more careful than that. There was something called the Tower of Babel, and when the languages were confused, and I think it's the same thing here in our own time.
yeah, we're getting confused because used to you go 2 or 3 counties over. Now you can't understand what they're talking about.
Well, I mean, talking about my people, I mean, my father, as I said, was not formally educated, not a big reader. He said he read maybe 20 books all of his life, and his mother was not but they had so they were not grammarians by any means, but they had a creative use of the language. I mean, I guess maybe they're the place from which they'd come, their upbringing in the Bible, that kind of thing, listening to preachers, that sort of thing. But they had a real creative use of the English language, which continues to be an influence on my own work. So there's a difference between useless slang, ephemeral slang, and a more creative use of the language, and it's the latter I'm after.
Well, I know Dr. Charles, when teaching history, would talk about the Gullah language, and I just thought that was just fascinating on how I love listening to it.
I do too.
It's like I don't know, it's just totally different, but it's got a unique sounding to it.
Yes.
And I was glad he introduced me to what that was there. I want to ask you about this book here. We're going to talk about your book too, but this book here is, and my wife wants to know too,
Okay.
A New England Romance.
And other Southern stories. That was the subtitle tacked on by one of the publishers who thought it might be nice and ironic. And that's got a story behind it, Jerry. That's one of the ones where I heard a voice, I heard a sentence came to me, and it turned out to be a short novel. And it was about a couple of women who were they had dragged out an old wedding dress that had never been used. The girl who was supposed to have been in it was stood up, sort of like Miss Habersham and Dickens, right? But and they're wondering about it. And that little idea turned into a short novel called A New England Romance. And it's a story about this young woman and her idealistic mother, and there's an acting troupe who comes into town. very handsome lead actor there. The girl becomes smitten with him. He kind of weaves her into his own little dream world. They wind up in Boston pursuing him, thinking that really there is going to be a relationship that might even move to matrimony. And of course, it's not. It's all an illusion. And that's the whole idea of the acting and the creativity and things. So that's where that came from. And that's the first story I wrote where I conceived this town called Compton, South Carolina. Originally called it Cawley. And I was going to set it in Georgia, and I thought, well, why are you going to set it in Georgia? You're not from Georgia, you're from South Carolina. So I moved the location there. But this character, Georgina Call, who is the narrator of that piece, is the first kind of Compton character I hatched.
Okay.
And she's appeared in other things, and kind of that reappearing thing that Faulkner did with his characters, and go further back, Honoré de Balzac did with his. And so that story's meant a lot to me over the years. I wrote it while I was studying with William Price Fox in Columbia back in the 80s, and it's comical, mainly comical. And Bill Fox, God rest him, he was the one who made me believe I could do this.
Right. Yeah, that's what Edna was talking about was she said, Randy wrote a romance novel? So maybe he's got something hidden there.
Oh, I can't talk about those, Jerry. Little money on the side there.
But I thought that's funny. And I said, well, no. I says, and that's why I was asking earlier about where you got your inspirations in some of these.
The romance, of course, is also a term that means an adventure. So, and two women have an adventure by leaving South Carolina and going blindly up to New England to pursue this actor, who turns out to be not a big hotshot, but a waiter in a little seafood place or some little restaurant there in town. So it uses the term romance in a double way, a traditional way of romantic, but also in the term of adventure, an adventure.
Yeah. Question just come in my mind here is, how long on average does it take you to write a book? I mean, I know it depends on its kind, and it's right here, but just in like all the books you've written so far, what is the longest?
It takes about 2 years.
About 2 years?
Yeah, and some of them aren't that long either. It's just, of course, you have the obligation to teach and other things. George Garrett, the writer and professor, had said, you taught at Carolina for a while. He said, I'm a full-time teacher and a part-time writer, and that's about what it is. So that average is about 2 years. I'm about to finish a novel. Not all that long either, but I started it almost exactly 2 years ago, and I'm finally coming into home. So,
well, now you've got a new book out now. And we was all kind of curious on this one right here. You wouldn't believe the names come up on this one right here.
Yes, I would.
The Gift of Gab.
Yes.
And tell me about Miss Jenny the Graffenreid?
Graffenreid. I got that name. That was what I've done. I love names. That's one of the things I enjoy doing is fixing names to characters. And what I would do is I studied a lot of history, Southern history, and politics and things. So a lot of times I would name these characters after these old congressmen and women from the South, right? I mean, it's supposed to be kind of representative of the South. And there was a congressman named Graffenreid in Alabama and killed in a plane crash. But anyway, so Jenny and her husband are originally from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and a lot of my family is there too. But that's her point of origin. So I just went ahead and gave her the name of that particular congressman. But she's a lady of very generous means, very naive in a way. And in this story, she is accosted by a cook at the Pancake Palace.
Well, I wonder what that Pancake Palace is there in Union.
No, yeah.
Well, what is the theme around the book? A little bit of preview of the book itself, and then we're going to talk about some of these characters.
I think, oh gosh, that's a good question. I think love, hate, the struggle between parents and children, youth, the kind of the harshness at times of youth, sometimes the illusions both of old age and youth. I mean, Mr. Graffenried is an older lady, but she certainly has some illusions regarding people, and so do some of the younger characters there. And it's a book that climbs the scale from the affluent, such as Miss Jenny, to less well-heeled characters. There are all kind of people from all kinds of, and it's all I think all the stories except maybe one set in Compton, Compton County, and then some. You have characters who reappear, but it's a whole bunch of themes there. It's hard to.
Now, Jenny was a Methodist, right?
She was the Methodist.
The Methodist. Now, when you're talking about Compton County, do you sometimes use real counties or do you use fictitious?
Yeah, well, Compton's the only made-up one, and obviously it's based on Union. I mean, it's just inevitable that would happen. It's Faulkner invented Yoknepatalfa County, but it was really Lafayette County where he was born and brought up and lived most of his life. So it's the same thing with me. It's Union. I mean, Balzac had Paris. I mean, he had a huge city he could write about, right?
Right.
And get away with it, but you can't write about.
No, it's somebody's gonna pick something out like that. Now, Jenny was she's kind of committed to like a charities, wasn't she?
Yes, she's very charitable, and she allows herself to be talked into giving this worker at the Pancake Palace a ride back to a very dark part of the county that she's got no business being in, as she finds out a little bit later on. I won't reveal too many more details. But
Now, Simona Diggs.
Simona Diggs, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that character there.
This is a story called "The Dead Will Provide," and Simona is there's a part of Compton County called Bees Lap, and it's a variegated place, but there's a heavy population of African Americans there. A little community there, and Simona is somebody who attends weddings not so much to see the deceased off, but to stay for the goods, for the eats afterwards. And so she wears these trench coats, kind of like Columbo wore, and she packs the trench coat full of the hams and the cakes and things. And that's a story I got from a student. I did not make that story up. I got it from a student who said there was a lady. I don't know who she was actually. But who lived in that community. I don't know if it was the Carlisle community where it was, but who went to funerals to get the food and would take the food home.
Well, I kid with people a lot of times when I talk about, I says, I'm not going hungry, so I'll just look in the paper and see who's getting married or was a funeral or something like that, and I go pay my respects along with eat. I says, I can eat all week. When I read that, I said, oh, my goodness.
Right. Yeah. But what happens is the young people, I mean, again, this is the contrast of youth and age. That's a theme in the book, is they decide to play a joke on her that doesn't work out too well.
Well, I'll see she was stomped by some pranksters too. But see, we're not going to tell the whole book, people. You have to buy the book, go to Amazon or your favorite bookstore. Is it Cokesbury, or is it...
the name of the publisher?
Yes.
Green Altar Books.
Oh, okay.
In Columbia. Mm-hmm.
All right. And
we hope to have it more widely available. I'm sure our bookstore will get it, and we're hoping to. Right now, the main places to get it are from the publisher themselves or from Amazon, but we're hoping to expand on that pretty quickly.
Now we got another little romantic here with Debbie Lynn Fulton.
Debbie Lynn is a woman. She's approaching 60 when this story takes place, but she's never stopped being a girl. And she is, the story is called The Bereaved, and it's her uncle is being laid to rest. And she's not really, she claims to be the uncle's favorite. She was always the favorite. She was the favorite. But what she's really interested in is this romance she's having with an older gentleman from Gaffney. And during the funeral, he calls or texts her and breaks up with her. And so she winds up causing a real scene at the funeral there, really showing herself out there. And people kind of mistaken that, oh, poor Debbie, she really missed him. She really loved Emery, didn't she? She misses her uncle. She's not crying over the uncle. crying because the other fella dropped her. But she's kind of we say an ageless sort of child, a perpetual child. Kind of lives in even with her encroaching years, kind of lives in a dream world and that sort of thing, and doesn't really have a sense of other people's boundaries. It's just whatever occurs to her and her emotions and that kind of thing.
And just listen to these characters right here, and your thoughts in your mind says, "Oh, I think I know that. I know somebody like that." Oh, me. Now, Rusty Flowers. Rusty Flowers is who loves glitter, and I call it bling bling, I guess.
Bling bling now, yeah.
Yes.
We call it bling now.
You hearing that, Edna?
That's as far as the writing goes, that's the oldest story. It was actually written in Columbia back in 1989, I believe, and I read it in Bill Fox's class, actually. But Rusty has special needs, and he loves. It was originally called All That Glitters, and somebody said that's not a very good title, so I called it Crow Boy. Because crows, the birds, apparently are very attracted to anything that's shiny.
Yes.
Anything that shines, they're very attracted to it. So I changed the name of it to that. And he, in his pursuit of this, runs into a couple of really, and I won't even call them rednecks because they're rougher than that. I mean, they're down there. And again, it's kind of that same kind of theme in The Bereaved, the meeting of innocence and experience, a meeting of kind of childishness or childish goodness, meeting the harsh reality of human behavior. That's kind of how that winds up. And it's the only story I've written in present tense. I'm usually not a big fan of writing narrative in present tense. I think if it's a story, it happened, you write about it in past tense, even if it's a work of fiction. But I actually wrote that one in present tense and dedicated it to Ben Greer, who's a Spartanburg boy, who taught at Carolina for many years as a novelist. Published his first novel called Slammer about a prison. He actually went to work in a prison to get experience, but I dedicated it to Ben. I never had a formal class with Ben, but he was always very encouraging and helpful. And he was one of the first presenters. He was one of the presenters at our first literary festival too, back in 2011.
Well, that's pretty dedicated to go get a job at the prison to.
Yeah. He said, I want to know how it works, how this, the lingo, the mindsets, all those kind of things. He went and got a job as a guard.
Wow.
In prison, yeah. But he's originally from Boiling Springs, I think, originally.
Now, when I think of this, Otto
Runnels. This is a story that has, as I won't get into too much, this is the most, if the book has elements of the grotesque, and this is the most obvious element of that, and it actually happened to some extent. I grew up in a world of, talk about bullying. I mean, we were bullied all the time back in the 70s. Bullying is not a new thing, and my grandmother's neighborhood was just replete with bullies. And Otto is and I called him Otto because it sounds like odd, and he is odd. He is strange, and young people don't like, and children don't like strange. They like anything that's familiar. So Otto is strange, and so the young people really do a very ugly thing to him, and they're led by a character. Sort of the ringleader, the leader of the gang of the bullies and that kind of thing. And Otto survives their ugly prank and exacts his revenge on this ringleader. And what prompted that story, Jerry, I grew up, my grandparents lived on Bird Street, and there was a young guy like this who was very mean, very, very hateful. And 20 years later, he showed up at my house. He laid the linoleum in my parents' house.
Wow.
And he'd grown up. He was a very good-looking guy, tan and athletic, grown a mustache and everything. And my daddy says, "You remember?" I won't call his name because he's deceased now. But he said, "You remember so and so?" I said, "Yeah, I remember how mean he was." And the guy looked at me like, I'm different now. I'm changed. I'm different." So,
and that's usually what it goes with a lot of times with bullies. Sometimes
yeah.
we were kids. We picked on people for this and that, and then we kind of grow out of it. And I've known some that even when I went to school, there's some bullies that changed, and of course I also knew some that didn't. And unfortunately, they lived a short life. The ones that I really know.
Very short, very I hesitate to use the word tragic, but really pitiful kind of existences.
Right.
I mean, I was bullied incessantly, and again, it won't be any name calling, by somebody all through elementary up through 6th, 7th grade, and this person ended up a alcoholic or drug addict, denounced by his family, couldn't find any place to live, and came to our 10-year high school reunion over at the Arthur the Armory, and took a few steps into the lobby and fell down on his face drunk, and just had a really sad, pitiful kind of existence.
The boys I grew up with through the elementary school, it's usually that up to about the 9th grade or so. And,
yes.
And looking back and looking on their family life, they really had it rough.
They did.
And that just, I think, was their way of just lashing out.
Lashing out, yeah. A lot of them were poor, came from poor backgrounds or abusive backgrounds and things of that nature.
Yeah. Now, Jessie McMillan. Discovering her husband's infidelity carries out her retribution in a most public way.
There's a lot of retribution in this book, isn't there?
Yeah, there sure is, like
exacting of vengeance,
and I guarantee you, every wife's ears just perked up.
I think our audience picked up. Jessie McMillan is the grandmother of who I think is the main character in the Compton cycle. Is a character named Will McMillan. Who leaves South Carolina, goes off, gets educated, works for a congressman for a while, writes a book, comes back to Compton and teaches at the local university. And his family's one of the pivotal ones in the cycle of stories and novels. And that's his grandmother, Jessie. And she was influenced by my own grandmother. This story is actually an excerpt from a novel I wrote 3-4 years ago called Formerly Pauline Priest, and it's about a nursing home in a rural area, and it concentrates particularly on 3 women who are all approaching their centenaries. They're all about to turn 100, and they're all kind of drifting into the mist of Alzheimer's too, and the memory that remains most acute to them are the people they feel like held them back in some way, emotionally, other ways. And for Miss McMillan, for Jessie, it's this husband who's carrying on an affair with her sister-in-law, and so I use the vernacular in that story. Sometimes people will read these stories and say, "Are you sure you're an English teacher?" I said, "Well, I'm transcribing the actual language here. I'm trying to, almost like an anthropologist that way. I'm trying to get the language right. How I think there's a distinct South Carolina language, Southern language, and South Carolina language particularly. And I'm trying to capture that. That's one of the things I'm trying to do.
Right.
As other writers I've admired have done as well. So,
well, just like if you're reading a book, say from up north, and it's just a Southern book, like if they want to kind of read that Southern language or that particular language,
the authenticity of it,
yeah.
I mean, of course, you've got Southerners who speak beautiful English and refined English, and I use that too when it's necessary. I mean, I tell the students that you gotta be at the service of the thing you're writing, and if it needs the corn pone dialogue, you gotta have the dialect rather. You gotta have the corn pone dialect. If it requires a more elegant articulation of language, that's what you got to use. Somebody like John Updike, who's not a Southerner, but he was very good at that. I mean, he could write from the point of view of this teenage boy in one story, and the next story would be very, very long, the long language, the long words, and because that's what the story needed, so and the characters needed. So that's the way I approach it.
Well, folks, you need to buy this book. You got other characters in there. You'll hear all kind of tales. You'll hear tales of comic, pathetic, and even some master storytelling going on here too. So that's from the South. You need to read this. We're going to have Randy read a little bit from this book, and that way you get a little taste of it.
Thank you, Jerry. Actually, I think I'm going to read that piece that we were just talking about that excerpt from the novel, and it was published as a set-alone piece in the Dead Mule School of Southern Literature. That's a online journal. It's been publishing for years, and they've been particularly kind to my work. And individually, taking the piece from the novel, I've called it "What a Jezebel Looks Like" is the name of it, and it is from Ms. Macmillan's. I mean, she's narrating the thing. Let's see. Okay, let me find it. And it's short, but it gives you some flavor of a lot of the language in the book and the concerns and the characters. If I never say nothing else in my life that's true, there's one thing I can say for sure and be satisfied about it. Men is dogs, and always have been dogs, and always will be dogs. And that's that. Look at your Bible, look at your history, look at the way men has done women from all the way back yonder to all the way up here in the year 1947. I don't have time to list them all. Let me just say that the worst hounds in the pack undoubtedly belong right here in Compton, South Carolina, right here in the McMillan clan. You McMillan boys has You McMillan boys has got into all your trouble for one reason and one reason alone: the fact you cannot and will not keep your trousers shut. All of you, Earl, George, Russell, Harry, Clayton, the only McMillan that ain't got a problem keeping a good sense around a woman is Bert Etta, and that's 'cause she is a woman. Earl married and divorced twice, and him not even 40 years old yet. George and that Singleton woman all mixed up and shameful, and her barely out of the bassinet good. Clayton too drunk to know if he's sleeping with Sarah or some tramp from Broadesville. Lord knows what Russell and Harry's got into, but nothing would surprise me. And you too, Bert McMillan, yes you. I know all about you and Teresa. Don't try to lie. Fact of business, I have been in touch with Teresa about it this very afternoon. Said my piece to her about you and her and this thing y'all got going on, or had going on, I should say. For it's a finished thing now. I reckon you won't be quite as attracted to her after today. You might want to go down the road and take a look at her, see for yourself what I'm talking about. I had heard talk now and then over the years about you and your little girlfriends, whispers and such as that. There's some people can't live and breathe less'n they causing trouble for other folks. Even had a friend come up to me once in the mill and ask me if I knowed about you and so. Told her to go jump in the lake and not ever come around me talking like that again. It bothered me some at first, this talk, sure. What woman wouldn't have been bothered to hear her husband ain't been quite as faithful as he claimed, less'n she was made out of rock or something? On the other hand, I thought, goody good, if he's getting it on the side, that's less work and bother for me. But then Teresa's name got into it. Teresa Whitley, my sister-in-law. More sister than a sister-in-law. My best friend in the world. That's how close we been, practically blood kin. You know that. We growed up together in Gaffney, come to Compton around the same time, lived 2 houses down from each other for all these years. Talked every day, if we didn't visit in person. Natural enough, I didn't want to believe such a thing, no matter how much I might have heard. Not about Teresa. But then I found out for myself, from you, Bert McMillan. That's right, I woke up that night, heard voices, one voice, yours. Thought you might have been talking to Emery or Bertie May or Ruth. Maybe one of them was sick or scared and you were comforting them so's they'd go back to bed and get back to sleep. I got up and went to the den but stopped at the bedroom door to listen. You was in the dark with the phone in your ear, to your ear and talking, and I heard what you said. Not all of it, but enough. And I heard her name. You let her name drop in the dark, and I heard and knowed what was going on. Went back to bed but didn't sleep. When you got back in beside me a few minutes later, thinking I was sleeping, I prayed I didn't sniffle too loud to let you know I wasn't. The next morning I went about everything, getting dressed, making your breakfast everything, wondering if in the long run it really mattered that you and Teresa was seeing each other behind mine and Ed's back. Did I really, really care? More important, had I loved you in the first place? Enough to marry you, I reckon, but I wasn't even sure about that. You was good-looking enough when I met you, had that hard Macmillan jawline, and was put together well enough, looked good and solid in a military man's uniform, sort of like Gary Cooper, but a few notches down. But it takes more than good looks for a good woman to love a man, really love him, to find him good enough for her love so she loves him for keeps. You worked hard, always had, and went to church, till right recently. Leastways, you'd been baptized and didn't cuss all that much. Now and then, but not enough to give offense to a Christian girl or her daddy. But you was peculiar, still are peculiar, going off by yourself so much, even here in the house when I'm here nearby and might like to talk to you. You go to the kitchen and sit at the table like it's supper time when it's not, and for hours, or on the porch. Never asked me to come and sit out there with you. What are you doing by yourself, Bert? Thinking? And thinking of what? Other women? Teresa Whitley? Well, it's a new day, Bert McMillan, and I done put away my wondering and my worrying, done shut out the whispering of others and what they might mean. I roused myself this morning, fixed your breakfast, seen you off to the mill, then left this house in the very blaze of the hot summer sun, and walked right down to Ed and Teresa's. Didn't say a word to nobody, didn't have words in me good enough to say how I felt, just powerful feeling anger and righteousness. Went up Ed and Teresa's front porch, didn't knock on the door. We don't knock, you know, we kinfolk, we just go on in. So I went on in. Teresa was at the kitchen sink doing her dishes. "Hey," I says. She turns and sees me and wipes her hands on her apron. She knows something's up. "You all right?" she says. "No," I says back, and without saying nothing else, grab hold of her pretty brown hair and yank it so hard she hollers. But I don't let go, no sir. I ain't done with her yet. She's a yelping like a bitch in heat, and I just keep hold of her by the scalp and move the both of us toward the front door. It's like we're locked together, hand to head, with no chance of getting loose from each other. Pretty soon I turn and haul her behind me like I would a bag of garbage I was carrying out to the curb. We going outdoors. I want the whole of Bird Street, as many people who might be outside right then, to see what a Jezebel looks like. A genuine Bathsheba. The whore of Babylon. Don't need to go into the movie show to see her. Don't need no Barbara Stanwyck or Betty Davis. Here's a real life one right here in Compton, South Carolina. All you got to do is turn and look, see, get your eye full. I get her and me out to the front yard and set down in the grass right plumb near the edge of the road, hoping to God as many cars as they is in Compton would drive by and see us. Miss Jenny Lee Gentry's on her front porch in her rocking chair, spitting snuff through her first two fingers now and then and watching it land in the dirt. She probably thinks me and Teresa has gone crazy, acting like a couple of young'uns in the grass, which is fine. We are crazy. At least I am crazy with hate for a woman I thought I could trust. I'm on the ground and I pull down Teresa across my lap. She's short but a little stocky, so it hurts some, but I don't care. It's a good hurt, a righteous hurt. I pull up her dress so her bloomers shows, and I set about whooping the tar out of your little girlfriend like she's a young'un that's done something awful wrong. She's worse than that in my book. Miss Gentry's done stood up by now to make sure she's seeing what she's seeing, and it ain't the sweet-tasting chuckleberry put fool notions in front of her eyes. She don't know whether to laugh or call the law or what. "It's all right, Jenny Lee," I says to her. "She started it. She's earned it. And if you stick around till about 5 o'clock, you'll see Bert McMillan get his'n too." "I ain't gonna hit you, Bert. Not now, leastways. The notion might take me later, but not now. That's just something I said to Jenny Lee to make her to make a better show. You might have a weak conscience, but you still got strong hands. And if you hit me with them, I'd have to kill you. I reckon. For a man that lays a hand on me won't be a live man for very long afterwards. No, sir. I ain't going to touch you. And you ain't touching me either. Ever again. Long as we live together, your woman-touching days is over and done with.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard just a little story in there, The Gift of Gab. Buy the book and see if you maybe know someone that follows that description. Remember, this is fiction and with a touch of reality. Who knows? That's going to great job. That's a good story right there. It's very humorous, but everybody can relate. Well, not everybody, most people.
Well,
can
there's
relate.
real pain there. I mean, she goes about narrating in a way that might draw a laugh, but she's hurting. So,
tell again where people can purchase your book.
well, Amazon.com, of course. There's also Green Ultra Books. It's an imprint of Shotwell Publishing in Columbia. You can order it from them also. And as I say, we're hoping very soon to have it available in the USC U bookstore and other places as well. And if you have any problems getting it, let me know, and I'll
That's right. Just
make sure to.
well, contact me or you, either one. We'll find them in the book there.
Thank you.
That's for sure.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it.
And plus, be sure to check out the rest of Randy's books. He's got quite a few out there. If you go and just Google it, and then it'll come up all kind of stuff there in these books, and tells a little bit of bio in it with the books. So I encourage you to do it. Randy, really appreciate you coming and showing your book, and because I was curious about The Gift of Gab. I really was. And I was more curious about the romance, too.
Well, yeah,
That got the romance in that one, too. So,
yes, sir. Well, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate you having me. It's always a pleasure.
well, I'll tell you, it's a great pleasure having you here, and hope to have you again. And I'll tell you what, folks, this is another great show, and stay tuned to about 10 o'clock tonight. I got a lady that's coming on, Deanna Stefani. She is Stepanetti. She has her new hit single coming out, and she's coming out in November the 6th, and she wants to talk to you a little bit about it. We're only about 20 minutes. She's all the way from California. It's going to be 7 o'clock there, and guess what? It's going to be 10 o'clock here. So you can stay up, or you can watch it a little bit later on. And we got Veterans Day next week, so be sure you come to the Veterans Day festivities at the stadium, and it's going to be around 10:30 at the Union County Stadium. So come and support your veterans. Well, I'm Jerry McKee, and thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Have a great